and but he was already called Deputy. So he started calling me the captain. So the name Captain actually was my nickname for quite some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to just hang on there for 1 second,
Sure,
Andy,
sure. No problem.
because
You're
I think we just went live now after all this conversation.
right.
Yeah, now it's going on. I forgot to press a button
It's
which
fine.
said go
So he
live.
started calling me the captain. So the name Captain actually was my nickname for quite some time.
Okay. Sorry, give me a second. Andy,
Sure.
would you mind if we recap to the people? Because we got some viewers going on. I do apologize for that.
No
Hey
problem.
guys, what's going on? Welcome to Bullfunk Studios channel. And I think I'm going to have to restart this whole thing with Andy. So, Andy, I do apologize. We were just talking about great stories of how Andy started and where he's at right now. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Andy Ward. We call him the captain, or from what I remember back in the day, we call him the captain. He's the audio engineer from hell. And Andy was just telling, I was asking Andy about how he started off, and he was reading the liner note credits on an album. Which Pink Floyd album was it?
Animals.
Animals, right? And he didn't want to stay at home, so you were 17, 18.
Yeah, something like that. I was a teenager. I didn't want to be at home because home was chaotic. Didn't want to work in a bank. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't want to do manual labor because I didn't like lifting manual labor.
Right.
And I kind of always liked music, of course. I used to listen to a lot of music, and I read the liner notes. I said, well, that's like Britannia Row. And I went and knocked on the door at Britannia Row Studios and was asking for a job. And as we just was said, I'll recap. So I was a teenager, and I went, and I grew up in London, so I could just go around all these studios and I'll knock on the door, give me a job.
Yeah.
As it turns out, I found a very small little studio in the ghetto of Southeast London,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother, God bless her, she paid for this 8-week sound engineering course,
Yeah.
and I did the course, and they had a studio, a 16-track analog studio with a Fostex tape machine. It looked like, like Star Wars control cockpit.
Wow. So was it like what was a 16 track tape machine, 24, 8?
16-track tape machine, just nothing special, not like a high end. This was a little project studio, small record labels. It was just a 16-track Fostex, by no
Nice.
means high end, but still
Still.
for that bracket of newcomer bands and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And anyway, so I worked for free. I sold hot dogs. I hoovered. I yeah, air conditioned. Like sprayed the room.
Right.
Sold beers to the bands, and that
So
was
basically starting out like
fun.
you're the studio bitch for a bit.
Absolutely.
But that's the way to learn, isn't it?
That's
Right?
it. No, and you absolutely. I mean, you got to sort of pick up these rules. Like you don't give an opinion.
Yep. But
Stay.
you're there to learn. You're there to absorb the whole atmosphere, and that's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a big important part of the studio is the atmosphere. It's the creative atmosphere, and you have to create that. And you play such an important role as an assistant. It's not just about learning; it's about setting the stage.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And you were the stage setter for whoever came in. You made everything comfortable, and on in return, you're picking up everything what's going on and how things work.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a brilliant experience to be able to have that privilege to
Oh
be
yeah.
even to work in a functioning running studio. You know, uh, like today,
Absolutely.
if you find something like that. But me and Andy were talking about before we went live. I thought I pressed the go live on YouTube, and I kept seeing the previews there. But what's going on? And I looked at the page, and there's nothing happening. And there's just one button I forgot to press. I do apologize. That was my mistakes first time here, and we're recapping on this. So you know, for anybody, I guess, who's starting out, it's different today.
Mhm.
Not far and few between studios around, and whoever's functioning is functioning, and everything's becoming more remote. But anyway, I do apologize. Let's get back to you on
Uh,
your studio adventure. So you were 17, 18 at that time. You were an
mm,
assistant in that studio particularly. So how long did you stay there for then?
Yeah, I can remember being there maybe 7 or 8 months, and I worked completely for free. And
Right.
on the side, I had to make my own money, and which I did. And then
How
I
did you do that? Sorry, just because I know you. I mean, to be in a studio, you basically all your life is gone, all your hours are gone. How did you manage to
well,
make money on the side?
I don't know if I can say, I had to
All
sort
right,
of go below the radar. I had to you had to do what you had to do to make the extra cash in the best means you know how. I can only say it like that without keeping
I
it,
totally get it. I totally get
yeah,
it.
keeping it
Totally.
G-rated. I had to you know, had to do what you got to do. And so, anyways, I did that, and so that was in Southeast London, this little studio, and but I learned a lot there, I guess. And then I went to the National Theatre, um, and I managed to get a college placement in Paddington. This kind of college placement doing sound engineering, but I didn't finish the course because I ended up getting lots of freelance studio work.
Right.
And I was just saying before just now in the warm up, I guess I feel very lucky because I've begun at the end of the analog time,
Yeah.
just before digital became so
More
mainstream,
popular.
and I caught both with the analog tape machine lineup, and that kind of so there was just studios everywhere, and record labels were just funneling money into studios, and there's just big bands recording all over the place all of the time for
Right.
months on end in studios. And so I was lucky to catch that. And so I worked in a small studio, National Theatre. I worked there. I wasn't really into the theatre scene. I always liked music. Then I was at Berwick Street Studios, um, Swan Yard,
Yeah. So that and
Strongroom Studios, and
Miloko as well, is it called?
Coco. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was very lucky to assist there and do some sessions there, engineering. And so, anyways, yeah, we just started that way, and it was yeah, like I said, I feel very lucky to have caught that assistant engineer lifestyle,
Yeah.
watching the guys making the tea, learning how to patch cables. And I think, like, more than learning about engineering tricks, I learned about people skills and etiquette
Right.
around clients and how to be in a studio, to be around but not be in the way,
Yeah.
to deal with egotistic personalities in a kind way, and this kind of stuff, and work ethic,
Yeah.
I
No,
guess.
that's. I mean, that is a big part of the job, isn't it? So again, is like setting the stage, and part of setting the stage is setting the atmosphere, which is what's your attitude towards the thing, and how do you pull back when, as you said, when you stand back, when you take initiative, when whatnot. So with these jobs that you got, um, when was your chance to or how did your chance come about to actually engineer? Did you start with like as a recording, was it, or did you get to mix right away, or how did that come along?
Yeah, usually in all the situations, it's being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Excuse
And
me.
where was yours?
I think there was a few of them. So I assisted at many different studios. So you assist there regularly.
Yeah.
You work with the same guys regularly, or the managers know you regularly. And then one day, someone's not gonna, for some reason, an engineer can't make it,
Right.
or for some reason, an engineer cancels, and then you're there, or the client, or that studio as an assistant. So you're just in the right place at the right time. It's like, oh, by the way, like for one example, one of the first ones, I was at Jacob's studio.
Right.
It was a wonderful facility, like a big manor house in the countryside.
Oh
Big
wow.
48 channel, I think it's a 48 channel Neve in one studio.
Which Neve was it? Do you remember?
Neve VR, flying faders.
Okay. Right.
So
Nice.
there's an analog, some E series or G series in the next room.
Wow.
It was I mean, live space. And then one day they're like, the engineer had to go from studio A to studio B.
Right.
They're like, oh, you're recording this. And I was expecting to assist. And so you end up jobs, you're just like, okay. And you don't even have a chance to worry about it. So I think one of the first things I recorded was this artist called Snowboy, who's big
Mhm.
in the Latin Cuban.
Right.
He does this Cuban music stuff.
Right. So when you did that, sorry, just to jump in
Sure.
on that, because there's always information about assistant engineers, like on videos, that they miss out. Example.
Mm,
So when you managed to jump on that opportunity,
Mm.
Did you already have the experience of what mics to use? Like this band came in. Did you know the sound of this band, or how did you come about? Like example, all right. What was it? What kind of band was it? Was it like I mean, what is it? Rhythm section, drums, bass, keys, guitars, and all of this stuff. And do you know what I mean?
There was a lot of them. They were
All right.
they make Latin music. He's a percussionist, so there's
Okay.
loads of percussion. It's
Horn section.
kind of Cuban funk outfit.
Oh wow! So that must have been a big band. It must have been a big challenge for you to get the. Was it a nice room at least that you can manage to work with the room, or
Place, man. It's a I don't know what, 48 tracks, 56 channel SSL, a live room. You're looking out into this garden. There's
right?
at that. To be honest with you, at that point, it's I'm so nervous.
Right.
It's just like I'm not worried about mics. I just want to record it well.
Right.
It's just like it doesn't matter, man. Just because whatever mic I didn't remember. I wasn't that technical. It's just like I just
Yeah.
want this to go well.
Right. Right. Right.
Mic, plug it in.
Yeah. Just plug it in.
Get the headphone mix going because people. This is the headphone mix was so
It's
people.
crucial because the performance is key in any recording, and that's what I always say to everybody. It's like performance is key. Capture that performance beautifully. And then comes, but what I meant to say about the mics, I'm like, did you know your way around already the studio of what mics they had and whatnot to be able to just throw them up and patch everything in?
The key is, see, as an assistant, you don't really get paid that much. So one of the benefits is free studio time.
All right, so you experimented a lot then.
And if you're smart, you on your days off, you go and use the studio.
Right,
You're going to be assisting forever.
right, of course. Now you have to develop anyway, and that's the whole key to it, isn't it?
So you have to have some confidence that you know the console routing, that you know how to do a headphone mix.
Yeah.
About mics and stuff. I can't remember. I was so at that point wasn't so sophisticated.
Right.
More about the console routing, the headphone mix, record it right, don't delete it. You know, record a part and
Oh,
keep.
you ran it on tape at that time, didn't you, or was it already Pro Tools in there, or any?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, we're on tape, and so this kind of stuff, and it's about working in high pressure. It's like, I think I'm gonna try the Neumann. Just like, "No, dude, plug that sucker in, dude, and get going.
exactly. I mean, yeah.
It's sometimes it's like that. It's sometimes like that. Not all the time. You have the luxury to.
So how did you come about like with the Q mix, the headphone mix at this moment? Since you have a big band over there, and I'm sure were they a demanding band? I want this, I want that, I want that, Q this, Q
Yeah,
or how was that?
they're experienced. At that time, I remember it going. I don't remember of any problem, because if there's a problem, people let you know. So look,
Right.
in that instance, it was fine. It went well,
All right.
and you just kind of people need to hear themselves, and
Yeah.
you just get it done. You have to know your cue sense. You fold back, and on the same note, I was in another studio a few years later, and I didn't know it so well, and maybe it wasn't set up, but I didn't know it that well.
Right.
Again, it happened. I was there. I was an assistant. It was a bigger studio, or a different SSL studio, and then I was in the hot seat again to record vocals. And in this studio, there wasn't a window. Anyways, I couldn't get the headphone mix going, you know.
Oh, what happened?
And the woman, she blasted me big time. Blasted me big time. And when I got my feelings hurt, it's
It's
like,
all good, it's part of the game, isn't it?
but it's
But
it.
what happened there?
And it was the last time it happened, because I made sure I know my stuff.
So let's talk about what happened there. Was it just a button that you forgot to click on, or do
I
you remember?
something. I don't know.
It's always something silly, isn't it? It's like even my suit, like, why the hell is this compressor not going on? And it's like, oh, okay, I need to put the threshold a bit up. Like all these little things, or a little jack is a bit out. That's a beautiful part about it, but in some way it's daunting as well. But when you figure it out, like, oh God, what an idiot! I should have,
Because because I teach now mainly, and I see my guys that do this signal flow exam,
right,
and they're terrified. Some guys are sweating, doing the
yeah,
signal flow exam.
right,
My heart goes out to them, because it can be stressful. But when you have clients, I try to pass that on, that sometimes you just have to keep people happy and get the session running smoothly, and it's not always about equipment.
No, I know that. I know that. It's all.
stuff. So this
But
is what
it's funny to
inspired
hear these stories. That's why, because people, a lot of people don't talk about these things, but they're there, and this is how you pick up on things, So
because we have to things go wrong and then we learn. But mostly, and there's some other experiences. I've had different experiences where so that time was with Snowboy, recorded some of his stuff. Another time it's happened in Berwick Street Studios. The same things happened, and I ended up recording with DJ Shadow, for
right,
example. I was just in the right place at the right time. He was a
right.
client, engineer's not there. Oh, we're going to record some brass or something. And it's like, yeah, cool. By then we was on digital ADATs.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, right. So
Yeah.
this segues into you working with people like you mixed Craig David's "7 Days" song, which was a fantastic mix. I remember that song pretty well. How was that?
We
How
did,
was that experience?
this was another one. It was just in the right place at the right time. And
Right,
really, and I can't say I was so much an engineer's engineer. I'm more, so I was in the right place at the right time. In the Strongroom at that time,
right,
there was like three, there was quite a lot of studios there, but there was this studio called Euphonics.
right.
And some of the old school engineers would come into the Euphonics room, and I would kind of translate the console because they're used to analog.
Right.
So I would translate. I'd be like, okay, this is like the SSL, this is like the Neve, and
Right.
so
But
anyway,
you
on
need to
that,
do that if you're part of the studio and an engineer comes in and doesn't know the console. You have to have someone there who knows how to get by. You can't just like be an engineer off the bat because everybody's workflow is completely different, isn't it?
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And this is so these guys came along, Mark Hill and Craig, and they're like, we're doing a mix, and I was like, okay, well, who's your engineer today? It's like, you're doing it.
You.
Like, cool. Okay. So it's fine, and it was, I think it's a very easy mix. It's no more than 16 tracks. You can hear it. It's very
You
simple.
got it.
It was just a basic balance,
It
and
sounds great though.
it was a very, nothing fancy, some tube tech, some DBX,
Yeah.
nothing fancy, just some lexicon reverbs.
Right.
Um, and he knows what he wants, so you just kind of do a balance and he does some,
You
does that
didn't track. You didn't have nothing to do with the tracking on that. It was just the mixing on it.
correct. Yeah,
Right.
correct. Yeah,
That's
so
yeah.
it's in the right place at the right time. He left. And then and a few months later, it goes to number one, and it's just like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
Fantastic. Did
Yeah,
you get points on that, or just get paid by the hour for the mix of that?
not unfortunately not get points, but
That's all good.
yeah, on this topic, a lot of the times people don't get credits, and I try to encourage the giving of credits to people where it's due. And one of the things that I think we're missing, at least in modern times, with everything being as a download, is artwork, and the engineer credit, the bass player credit.
Right.
We've done the management credits, and so when engineers and assistants don't get credits, it affects them, and
Of course, because you put your. So you didn't. So what happened there? You didn't get
I,
credited for that?
I got credit on the album, but not on the single or something. I can't forget which way around it was, or maybe it was the other way around. I think I got a credit. Yeah, I got a credit on the album, but maybe not on the single or something. I can't remember how it went. But I
Right.
know lots of engineers. I've worked with so many great engineers who've recorded some good stuff. More great engineers than for sure. I don't consider myself a great, but
Oh, you are great, dude. I've worked with you before.
so much. Thank you so
You're
much.
just humble because you're still thriving and hungry for it. So we'll
Oh,
always think,
about that. Thank you so much. And
yeah,
I think it's important that that's recognized artwork, because when we look at a CD or an artwork, like we feel connected with the artist who's doing it. Like there's this band. So some of my students have introduced me to Five Finger Death Punch, and um,
heard
and
of that.
I just love their artwork. It suits them. It's like,
Right.
man, I can identify with that energy, or sometimes like the Boards of Canada. It's kind of
Yeah.
the artwork is important, the credits are important, the lyrics I think are important, and this is the whole. I don't know. I think sometimes it's lost. It's like, yeah, send you an MP3. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that is a whole topic. I think we should do another episode talking about
Sure.
these little
Okay.
things.
Fair enough. No.
Because we can go, but I think just to touch up on that, I think that the music world or the business part of it has changed completely. but the music making side is the music making side. But how people perceive music and stuff, that's a completely different topic.
True,
I
true.
know exactly where you're getting at, so I think we should leave that one for another time. But in the meantime, we're getting a lot of viewers here asking questions and commenting, so I'm just going to read some out for
Oh,
you.
sure, sure, sure. Hit me, hit me.
Cool. So, hey, Freddie, Charlie's on here, Leslie, Tom Davidson,
Oh,
Power
oh,
Rangers in the house.
oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Huh.
You can actually open up the YouTube channel. See, if, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you can see the comments. You probably
Oh,
can.
sure, sure. So yeah, we got some of our old friends there and
Yeah.
engineers.
Converging Sounds. I remember this story, sir. Do you know who Converging Sounds is? This is related to
Yeah,
your.
that's cool. Welcome to those guys. And
Oh, you gotta put the volume down on your YouTube because it's feeding back at this moment. Did you catch me, Andy?
I think I'm gonna put my headphones on, dude.
No, no, you gotta turn when you're on YouTube there, just the volume knob on the YouTube itself, just turn it down. All right, we're gonna be coming back with Mr. Andy. You gotta put the volume down on your YouTube because it's should work anyway. So we got I'm trying to there's Mr. Margaret Scratcher. This is a friend of my wife. He's a really funny guy. Great. He's a producer, musician. He's like, hey guys, he mixed the drums on Monday, mixed the vocals on Tuesday. Coming back to your Craig David story. And there's Nicky Mookie on there. He's like, still remember the sound you got on the early Abhorred stuff and love it still to this day. That's fantastic. Do you remember the Abhorred stuff? I
Dude,
think it was Mind Loop when you were in there at that time.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
everybody, and that's so cool. Yeah. Excuse me for going off topic with the artwork. So we were talking about if anyone has any questions, that's fine. Yeah, or I can.
I'm just reading the comments on there. So let's maybe this is a good place to kind of get people to open up questions. I wanted to talk to you about when we're talking. Well, there's another thing before we jump into Dido and Craig David and all that. You worked with one of my favorite people, Lemmy from fucking Motorhead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How was that experience?
Okay, so let me from Motorhead. This was very cool. This was at the Strongroom Studio 2, and I was assisting for a guy called Dave Pemberton.
Right.
Dave Pemberton is like badass, badass, seriously awesome engineer, and I was very lucky to assist Dave Pemberton. I just want to shout him out because he's the top man. Anyway,
Hopefully watching if he is.
yeah, I'm sure he's doing something. He's probably mixing someone really. It's probably mixing something very good.
Right.
Anyways, yeah. So Lemmy came in. We used to get lots of people coming into the strong room. It was a good studio and still is. And so Lemmy came along and he was doing some bass overdubs, I believe, for a 50th anniversary live show gig at Brixton.
All right.
And
Okay.
yeah, that was I think it was a 50th anniversary or some anniversary Brixton live show.
Right.
Into the strong room to mix it in surround for the DVD. Dave
Right.
was mixing it. I was assisting Dave, and Lemmy came to do a bass overdub. And I think he might have done a vocal. And I remember specifically we had this little overdub room, and I set up the mic for Lemmy, right?
Right.
And I set it up in a normal way, and he come along and moved it sort of like that.
Yeah, that's the Lemmy thing, isn't it?
God damn it! And
But just out of curiosity, gear question, just for the gearheads out there. So, what mic did you use on Lemmy? I'm just curious.
I don't even remember, to be honest.
Was it like a dynamic or a large diaphragm? Or
I believe so. I believe it was a simple dynamic.
nice. Yeah, I think that's what would get it, isn't it?
Same from the concert, I believe so.
Right. Anyway, go on.
Lemmy came and yeah, he was a really nice guy actually. I think we were. I don't know. I'm always very sociable with clients if they need it, and he was a cool dude. We hung out quite a lot. I think he spent 10 days together there, and we were hanging out. We had dinner. We went drinking together. I drank with him, and we played pool. And he was telling me all kinds of stories about his family and his early life and Hawkwind. And we were. It was very cool. I felt very privileged to.
He's from Stoke, right?
He's not. Yeah, he's from somewhere up north.
Right.
They're just all northerners. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was really sound, and yeah, he signed my. I was telling you the other day on WhatsApp.
Right.
He signed my. I've worked with all kinds of artists, and I've never asked for an autograph, like ever.
Yeah.
But in this case, I was like, dude, can you sign my bottle? And he signed my Jack Daniels bottle.
Oh wow. Do you still have it?
I do, and he signed it to Andy. Who knows where the dead bodies are?
What a dude, man. He was such a legend, that guy. I mean, he had such, I didn't know him personally, obviously, but you know, I love Motorhead and I read a lot about him and watched a lot of stuff and just a big, big, great rock. He's a true rock and roller. That's what I call it, a true rock and roller, you know.
And also a gentleman.
Yeah, uh, definitely, you know. So with these fantastic experiences working on large format and going into the box, I suppose now with SAE,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a lot of that going on. How did that transition feel for you?
Um, I guess
I'm sure there's a lot of pros and cons, but you know,
yeah, just kind of it was a natural progression, to be honest. I guess
right?
I guess it was a natural progression. Yeah, uh, yeah.
Okay,
What you mean,
that's
like working from a large format consoles, and then yeah, it was just a natural progression. I finished all of that. I had a, let's call it, journey of self discovery,
right.
and it seemed to be a natural progression. And like I said, nowadays I feel very lucky to have. I feel very lucky. I got some of my guys chatting down here. We got Converging Sounds,
Yeah,
and they're here, and I'm very proud of them. Guys like that, I'm very happy to sort of play a small role in perhaps inspiring them and trying to pass on some great wisdom that I've had to guys like Converging Sounds and Charlie Almiri. He's here, Charlie
yeah.
Almiri. Great
He's a great
guitar.
guy,
Yeah, yeah, Charlie C.
fantastic engineer as well.
Yes, and Nicky Mookie. I'm just looking,
Yeah,
you know,
Milton's there as well. Hey, Milton. Hey,
it's
guys. And Steve from Dirt Floor Productions or Dirt Floor Recording Studios. I got to meet him on He's on there too. He's
oh,
going to be on the show soon as well. He's got a fantastic studio. I think he's running a nice Neve in his studio at this moment. Yeah,
oh, wonderful. Yeah.
yeah,
So, anyways, yeah, like I said, I'm very lucky to have some experiences and pass them on, and worked with all kinds of artists and DJs, and been to parties and festivals,
right.
and it's not all like that. A lot of the time, it's quite boring. People forget that.
Yeah,
People think it's all rock and roll, and a lot of the time you're waiting a lot. You know, you just kind of, and I think what I try to pass on is now people want plugins and they want things done offline, things to be mixed fast, but people don't realize it's a slow process. Play the song top to end, play the song top to end,
oh, 100%.
go back the next day, listen, go back the next day,
Yeah,
and then go back.
refresh and go back, refresh, go back. And you know like my wife, you know, I've been mixing this record for a band and you know with revisions these days. So this, I think this brings to the question of remote mixing.
Right.
uh you know, I mean, I remember like, I think 18 years ago, I remember I had an album for a project I had, Abstract Collision. We tracked it all live and it was in my mom's living room, and that living room sounded great,
Mhm.
I have to say. We had drums, we had percussion, I was on guitar, and we had a horn player. And I can't remember if we just used 8 channels to record all of that. So we did a whole you know, improv 3-4 hours session or something like that. And 5 nice songs came out of it. Never released it digitally, but I put it on well, printed them on CDs, and when I had different shows, I'd sell them there or whatnot. And I remember like I mean, I didn't mix anything off that. You just tracked it, and it just sounded so good and natural because it had that psychedelic world music vibe.
Yes,
So I
yes, yes.
left it as raw as possible.
Mhm.
I should revive that. Remember,
Yeah,
but yeah, do you remember it?
I do. Yes, nice
Yeah,
stuff.
I had my. I think we were using. I think when I remember when the Digi 001 first came out, and in 2000 and went and got one. I was like, wow, this is cool, and with Pro Tools and stuff, and I think we used that. I think that was it. I can't remember if it was an 8 channel, 4 channel, or maybe we got something else to cascade with it to get more. I can't remember. Maybe we recorded all with 4 mics. But you did. I mean, you engineered it and it just sounded great off the bat in a living room.
Mm.
Luckily, the living room was, you know, was decent sounding at that time, and we're all playing it all live. You
Well,
know,
like another thing, I don't know, it's worth mentioning. It sounds decent because the players sound great.
uh,
You know that's
well, I wouldn't say that now, but you know, for myself and the guys, but we've all progressed. You know, that was 20 years ago almost. So
of course, and I see these. I think this is an important message that you know it's fine having plugins and technology, like and I love this studio you have, but I know that that it's not necessarily about all those
nope,
preamps. It's about
about the ears,
ears, the sound of the instruments. So the
yep,
players practicing for 8 hours a day, like I know you
100%.
and Rami and Ellie Afif and Ronnie Afif, these great musicians, and Nikki down here, and so many great musicians who are practicing with a metronome. You know,
Well, I practice a lot, so you know, coming to your point on this question, I mean, I've been playing. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a musician. You know, I got into all of this is I think this is why like the home studios or other studios or musicians who make their own music and engineer their own music is they just want a it's like a painter, so it's my canvas, and I have these ideas because I want to create and compose, so I need something to do it on. These are just the paintbrush, and the ideas are my instruments and my composition, and these are the tools to put it on there. Or these are sorry, the colors, I should say, the colors I choose is all the compositions and the stuff we play, and these tools are the actual paintbrushes, and
like
then Logic Pro Tools or tape, that's the actual canvas to put it on. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Because when I grew up when I was a kid, was really young. My dad's an artist, so we had a studio where he'd paint all the time and all of that stuff. But I was always intrigued with music and just playing and all of this stuff. But one day I discovered we had a tape machine at home, like a normal cassette player. And my dad had a tape machine, you know, one of those, I think it was a quarter inch or half inch, I can't remember. It's just a playback, but I had a mic input with a record button. It was a small, I think it was like one of those TX or something like that. But in the 80s, that was a normal thing to have in the house. So I discovered one day, because my dad used to like to sing as well, he'd plug it in and he'd sing into it and it'd record. Well, I don't know if it was him or his friends. I can't remember. So I remember I took that once, and there was a cassette tape machine. Also had the record button, so I'd record something into there, and then play it back and record it into the other machine on top of each other. Obviously, with a lot of probably phase going on there, and then I'd take that tape and put it on that tape, and then re-record again. So I'd have already kind of two tracks on one tape, and then a third track on top of it. So I was experimenting because you have ideas to put it on. So I know I got off on a tangent here. I do apologize, but it's all about throwing it on that canvas. And I was trying to find that canvas, I suppose, when I was young for my music and other people's music.
what
So sorry, go on.
what I take from the tangent, the message is this is what I hear you saying, and what I when I think of myself, is being lost in the music. I remember being before I started, I would listen to a record and just be amazed.
Yeah,
You know, I didn't know anything. I was just it transported my entire being into another dimension, which was good at, and this is the magic and I don't know. I think the message to pass on to new people, if someone listens to records in that way, or music, I say records, if someone listens to music in that way, where it's a total escape, then
yeah.
perhaps it's worth pursuing. There's something in that. This is the message about the what I hear you saying.
Of course, if you love something, I mean, for me, it's like go all the way for it, you know. And we're dealing with music here, which is the most beautiful thing in the world for me, particularly.
Oh,
If you, yeah, there's a question.
yeah,
Go.
we're at a gig for that Cuban band. Can I read that? Can I read this question
Yeah,
out?
yeah, of course, go for it.
This is Brent A. Hey man.
Brent, what's going on, buddy?
So the question: when you're at the gig for the Cuban band, did you have to work with other people during that session, like a tape op? So basically, that session, it wasn't a gig for a Cuban band. It was a recording session in a recording studio. and the Cuban band came in to record an album, and I thought I was assisting an engineer who was recording their album in a studio. The engineer had to go to the next studio, so all of a sudden there was no engineer. So me being in the right place at the right time, I got to record that. I can't remember what it was, to be honest. I was so terrified that I wanted the session to go well. So that's so I hope that answers Brent
Yeah.
question like that. I was just in the right place at the right time, my friend.
There, there, there's another good question here. This is from Jay Goggler Audio. I hope I pronounced his name right. When starting a new mix, do you have a specific workflow or starting point, or does it change each time?
Yeah, I think I used to have traditional start with the kick, add sounds one by one. I guess I started that way to learn, but now I kind of throw everything in at the same time.
Well, I mean, I mean, everybody has his one. Like for me, I throw up the faders. I have my big mouse, this, and I get a mix. I get the tracks, and I just throw up the faders, and I try to, the usual thing. You try to balance just a little bit, just to get what the music's about. But the first thing I jump on before I even delve into each track is I have a stereo bus. So I put like, I got two comps and an EQ, and I say, and this is something obviously I've picked up from online a lot, from a lot of engineers and whatnot, is if I can get already a nice sound out of like a compressor and an EQ on the stereo bus, then it makes my life easier. And obviously, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, but I have picked it up, and it does make a lot of sense. And then I just jump into it, the kick snares and whatnot,
I would say one thing to Jay Glaugla Audio, excuse me if I don't pronounce that. I think the most important thing is whether you're using Logic or Cubase or Reaper or whatever program, and if you've got some swanky gear, that's cool. I think the most important thing is the gain structure, is to get that organized first. Levels not smashing through the roof.
and
Uh,
phase.
yeah, just to get that stuff done, the sort of technical, the gain structure, rather than starting with faders at zero, bring everything down to -10 or something. Start from that point. Then
I usually put a gain reduction thing rather than the faders on
gain
that.
reduction.
But
So
also it depends, because like, I mean, also depends on the workflow, because I go through a summing box, 32 channel summing one. This thing likes to be driven hard. So the first initial stage I keep everything at -16, and
yes.
then on my stereo bus I keep it at -8 to -6 on total. But
Mhm.
then when it comes to stereo bus, when it feeds back in, this thing likes to be driven hard, and it sounds great. So that's just when I drive it. So I suppose, but yeah, if it's just in the box, as you're saying, is the gain structure is so important, because there's only so much the the eyes and the zeros can handle, without clipping and sounding nasty.
Any more questions down there? Is there any more anything down there?
Oh, we pronounced his name correctly. Thanks, Jay. Do you have any pieces of gear that you've collected over the years that you still have and will never part with? This is from Audio 911. I'm not sure. Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
have any pieces of gear?
I don't have any gear.
Well, you have SAE. They got a lot of gear, so you don't need to get any gear, is it?
I like gear, and but I don't have any gear. I don't have any studio. I guess I spent some time moving around, and yeah, I don't have gear. You know, so yeah, you go. Have some plugins, have a computer. So no, can't. I can say no. I don't have any. There's some gear that I like, but I don't have it or carry it around.
But do you have any gear in SAE studios
Yeah, there's some
you
gear
like to use?
studios. I think the most important thing is the room. If you can get access to a good room.
Well, if you're mixing, though, I'm saying
Oh, it's yes, I mean, yeah, mixing. Yeah,
yeah.
even mixing if you have access to a good room, I think this is. I would rather have I'd rather have a Logic or Pro Tools of its basic plugins in a
Yeah.
good room than have lots of swanky plugins and equipment in a bad room. I would pick the.
Well, less is more. That's what I always say. I mean, there's a good. I suppose I'm sure you show this to your students, where they're only allowed to use one kind of reverb, one kind of compressor, and one kind of EQ on a whole mix. Now
Yeah,
get creative with that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know. And
yeah.
that's where creativity comes in, isn't it? I was saying, sorry, go on.
So yeah, I think one of my guys, I think one of the messages that I carry continually is the message of the mono button.
Yep.
This is the most important plugin. It's the mono button. You know, this is my. It's like high on the list of must-have plugins. It's free, and I think this is an important piece of equipment that people forget. And one speaker, you know, turn off one speaker, start your mix like that, and work in mono. And you can pan, but work in mono. And I would guarantee that person they will have on the same day the mixing skills will increase on the same day.
Because they're forced
It's easier.
to make it sound good.
Yeah, if it sounds good on one speaker, it's going to
Hmm.
sound twice as good on two. It's common sense.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So here's something I'm just reading the question. See, yeah, the mono button's God level. Okay. And that's from Converging Sounds. And how's SAE London doing? And is Preben still there?
I
Oh,
been to SAE London. I work in SAE Dubai. DXB.
all right. And there's a question from Tom Davidson.
Oh, Tom Davis,
Uh,
like brothers.
he's like, what's the best way to avoid deleting a sax solo on tape? I think there's a little story there for you.
I'm gonna have to keep this PG rated.
All right.
Yeah, I have deleted things actually. Yeah, I've deleted things. Ah, I know what he's laughing about. Yeah, 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 yeah. So like I guess if we're talking about gear and things, you know, we used to record on tape, and we'd mix off a tape. And sometimes you'd have to do overdub. You know,
Yeah.
so like what's different now is is the is the importance of record. You know, like you're gonna record something. It used to be like okay, it used to be like a big deal. Yeah, we're gonna record because
Right.
it's a moment, you know, and
Yeah.
if it goes wrong, you're gonna delete something. So it really had to be well prepared. Okay, I'm not gonna record over something, and I've recorded over some things, and I made a mistake, and luckily it wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't like the lead vocal. But anyways, so I guess Tom was having a little laugh about that. We've had our days of you know of learning the hard way.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I
there was
mean,
a couple of us. There was me, Tom Davidson, and this guy, and Nick, and we used to work in Berwick Street. And
Nick
another,
Caffrey.
yeah, yeah, yes,
Of
another
course.
thing I mentioned is just now I was just in London at my mum's place, and I found all these. This is useful. I found all these invoices,
Yeah.
1994, and they're signed by another engineer called Roy Merchant, who's also a wonderful engineer, and he he was my timesheets,
Right.
and the hours were 14, 16 hours, 14 hours, 12 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 14 hours, 18 hours, months and months of timesheets. Like 8 hour days, like a half day.
Right.
Now my guys, some of them, they're like, man, sir, we've been here for 2 hours already, and I want to take a break. I'm like, you know, I try to, so this kind of work ethic, I learned that from guys like Roy Merchant and Dave Pemberton and Neil McClellan and so many wonderful engineers, Tom Davidson and Matt Foster. Really, really, we learned that things don't happen overnight.
Now, there's no cutting corners in music, in performing music, or engineering. I mean, why do you think I have my studio in my house? Because I sleep 2 hours and the rest of the day I'm in here, you know, or now I'm on live stream. But that's if
And
you love it, you'll do it. It doesn't matter. Like, it won't feel like work. I mean, that's for sure, yeah. And that's a very important work ethic is strive and self-develop and I think a very important thing in the studio is to keep it like every day when I have some downtime I experiment with all the gear. Well, how does this sound? So I have sheets like how does this mic sound with this or this combination, that combination. So whoever comes in, I'm ready to go. Or let's try something weird and exotic or crazy. Like, do you remember my studio I had 20 years ago? I was in a porta cabin in a construction site.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, maybe.
I had a drum room. It was a shitty drum room, and it was Nicky Mookie's brother's drums, Praveen, and I had a set of congas there, and I was, experimenting with miking this drum kit, and I wanted a cool room. It was a tiny room. I was like, all right, cool. I stuck a 58 in the conga underneath.
Nice.
And funny enough, I got this really cool low, subby low end from there, which I actually used on a kick, completely out of phase, but whatever, it was great. You know what I mean? So experimenting is a big thing. If people are waiting around, I think with the work ethic, find something to do. Find something that will help you progress, I suppose,
But
and work your ass off too.
so there's a question again from Brent A. And a question about the mono button. What if you have tracks that you specifically put out of phase, chorus stereo widening? Would that be problematic listening mono? So about stereo widening, everything. Stereo delay, stereo widening, stereo chorus. You could check it all in mono. And if it sounds good in mono, it needs to be, it won't be problematic. Well, and if it is problematic, this is the reason. The question is, will it be problematic in mono? If it is problematic in mono, then you'll know it because you'll hear comb filtering, and then you know that you need to edit that effect. So if it sounds good in mono, even stereo, especially stereo effects, if it sounds good in mono, I guarantee you when you open the stereo button, it will be like the heavens opened up. You're like, oh wow, it sounds great. Mono button is king, especially for stereo widening, especially for stereo effects, especially for those things. So I hope that answers your question, Brent. Mono, one speaker even. Do the stereo effects. One speaker, turn one speaker off. Press mono. And truly your life will change on the very same day. Sorry to
The regulations. No, no, no worries, no worries. This is what we want exactly. There's another question from Milton. Here's a question: you've set up to record drums the next day, mics and gobos set up, and you're ready for the next day. Have you ever had a wannabe engineer mess that up for you the following day?
no,
I
no,
don't think they'd mess with you anyway, Andy.
No, I've never that's never happened, and I've never done it for someone else because we got no, that's not happened, and hopefully I don't. I hope it won't.
Lovely. So here's something. I was watching a Pure Mix conversation with Andrew, the great Andrew Sheps and Fab Dupont,
Yeah, yeah,
and it was a cool little conversation because I always felt that way. And they asked themselves, do you still feel nervous prior to sending? Like someone sends you obviously a song to mix or a record, or usually a song if it is, and you finish the mix and you think it's an amazing mix, and you send them version one.
yeah.
You still get nervous sending it.
Of course, yeah. I sent you a mix the other day, and I'm actually not. I'm stranded in London. I'm mixing on these like Sony extra bass headphones. So it's just,
Right.
and anyways, so I just yeah, for sure, because it's yeah, yeah, of course, yeah. I do, yeah.
But well, they went off attention, and that was the reason why I brought this up, which is I think is very good. Even like as a musician, is like always, you know, it's the, coming back to work ethic is to strive for betterness of yourself, right? So whether it be it performing or even a mix. So I think if the point when you don't feel nervous is the point where it plateaus. I think your progression, the nervousness is a good thing.
Yeah.
Uh, I still do feel nervous, like, oh, are they gonna like it? They're not gonna like it. You start doubting yourself, especially when you've been listening to the mix, the same song, same parts, and tweaking and blah blah all day long, and you have a deadline. Mix version one needs to be in the next few hours. Let's go. And then the next thing you hear is like, what the hell was I thinking? Or no, that's a good mix. Or do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I'm trying to put it into the right words where it's like, just keep going.
I think it's something I wish I had more of that confidence. I guess I've worked with some engineers, and they just know it's done. This is a skill. I think it's some people are gifted with it, and some people know now this is done. You know, and yeah, so I guess it takes time. And some people
Yeah,
just naturally in them more than others. I guess, and that's why
everybody's different. But
a
I
good
think the key is to take your time take your time, and but what I think for me, I'm saying personally, is not take your time going into everything. I think because you need to capture the energy. For me, it's capturing the energy, or mixing the energy of the song to put it out. It doesn't have to be pristine and clean and spick and spanny and all of this stuff where it actually loses the energy and just becomes a completely polished apple, rather than have something that's hits you emotionally more. Do you know what I mean? So I think for me, the mix is like, I hear the song, it's like, not, I'm not talking about mixing fast, but mixing while it's fresh. And when I feel, uh, obviously everybody's different, so I was going to come and ask you, how do you do it? For me, it's like, okay, if, like, let's say I'm into it for an hour and then I'm losing the freshness of the song, this is when I know I need to go take a break for a bit and
Yeah.
so forth, and come back to revive the freshness or the feel of the song before. We're only human. Your ears can get tired, can focus too much on extreme detail that you lose the bigger picture, then you have to twist that back. And
Mhm.
you know what I mean? How do you, what's your thing on this?
Yeah, I think having ear break is very important because nowadays we don't have rewind. So, song ends, spacebar, beginning. Song end, ding, ding. It's relentless. And I think
Or loop, 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 loop.
it's unnatural. So I think taking regular ear breaks is essential. I saw a question here, if it's okay. Someone's audio 911. Question from Steve. So do you start mixing in mono and then do your panning after you're happy with all the levels of the tracks? Either or, it doesn't matter, Steve. Uh, one way, one school of thought, and I think both are valid. Faders up, pan immediately in stereo. Okay, ding, 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 ding. Get all your pans. It's fine if you do that, but do that first, then go to mono. Or just start in mono, one speaker, and do the levels. You could still, it's going to sound weird, but you can still pan with one speaker with the mono button on. Try it out. Sit in front of your speaker, mono button on one speaker, and pan. And you will hear the sound. Obviously, it's not going to go left and right because you're on one speaker in mono, but the sound will, it will change depth. But
You hear the depth in there, that's for sure. Yeah.
yeah, we'll try because it's summing from. Try both, Steve, and you'll find good results either way. Whether the mono comes first or whether the mono comes after 30 minutes, it's fine. But what Assad said about taking ear break, I think it's really important.
Well, it's not, that is definitely important, but my thing is like, it's more or less to keep the song fresh. Um, to keep that song fresh. Like the first time you hear, like let's say you get a great song, and the first time you hear before you start them, like, oh, this is a bopping song. You keep grooving with it. I want to try to keep maintaining that throughout the whole mix. I don't want to keep listening and getting bored of the song, because I feel like as soon as I start getting bored of the song, no matter what genre it is, I always try to find something beautiful in any song.
Mm.
This is when I was like, okay, um, I feel like I'm gonna lack the mix with heart and emotion into it, rather than and get more technical. So obviously the start of a mix, I try to do like a balanced thing, more emotionally and energetic. And once I get that plateau, just throwing up the faders and panning and blah blah blah. And when I set it to a point where, okay, this is driving right now, then I go into the details. That's when I don't need to
Yeah.
feel the groove and stuff. This is when I get a little bit more technical. But in the beginning, just to try to get all these set levels going on and just try to keep. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah. Another thing I've noticed now, because we have all these, a common mistake I see from young engineers, I guess, is they start a mix and immediately get out. You see, the Chris Lord,
No, that's yeah.
and, the,
I know exactly where you're going with this. Yeah.
and they put it on immediately. I'm wondering why it doesn't sound. They're like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Dude, get a dry mix. Do it in like what you're saying. It needs to be exciting.
Yeah, that's the right word. I forgot. I don't know why I didn't get that word right, but yeah.
Exciting without effects. Added layer of EQs, a bit more exciting. EQ dynamics, a bit more exciting. Maybe a little bit of automation, a little bit more exciting, and then the effects. The reverbs, delays, and flanges,
The
and
flavors we call them.
You know, this is the icing on the cake, and this is another a classic. I see it's regularly. So yeah, what you're saying is, and I think you know we want to be. I'm going to sound like so corny now. We want to be mixing, not fixing.
Yeah. See, that's coming back to this is the whole fix it in the box thing. You know, I mean, obviously today you get tracks and there's a lot of badly recorded tracks, and the first you got to fix it. You have to fix it to be able to mix it as well, you know. This is in these occasions. But if you get something recorded well and then people want to meander with it, why? Because our job as a mix engineer, if you want to mix, is to get something that sounds tonally beautiful and just polish it. You don't need to do much if it's recorded well. If it's not recorded well, like I got some vocals the other day, and obviously they're the predominant things, and it was recorded really badly in you know, in a lot of standing frequency waves in the room. I could completely hear it, and whoever's singing it is doing this and this, clicking away, you know, like he's performing on stage and stuff, which is all right. Yeah, and they weren't like they were all kind of the same verses, and it's like, oh, that was a bit of a challenge to at least just contain that vocal in one spot so I could at least work with it. You know, these are the challenges you have to face these days, unfortunately. You know, because not everybody can come to your studio, record with your mic and your pre's and your sound. You're gonna get other sources. That's when I say, okay, in the beginning, okay, throw everything up, and then you'll notice these. I mean, for me, I notice these problems. I try to push it, but if it's like too daunting, it's like I need to just fix this to be able. And then I go back and I push the faders up with the panning all dry, at least to get that balance.
Mhm.
These are these occasions. I don't get them that often,
Yes, yes.
but you know what I mean.
I hear you.
So
I hear you.
you know, it could be a karaoke microphone someone's been recording on, you know, with a cable that's out of phase, you know, something, you know, something that's loose or.
True, true.
You know, but yeah,
Yeah,
so um, now I want to ask you a question here. Just give me a second. I have something. Right. So coming back to like, you know, you're mentioning plugins and gear and all of this stuff. Look, and we said this before. It's like if you have a plugin, and obviously this is also going to sound corny and cliche. Um, you need to learn how that plugin sounds like before you jump into a million other plugins.
Mhm.
You know, it's the same concept. If I'm playing guitar or I'm playing a scale or whatever it is, or I'm learning a scale or, you know, doing something, I need to understand what that scale does or what this guitar does. You know, I can't change to another guitar. It gives me a different tonality, but I don't even know how it sounds. So it's the same concept.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
if you have a, you know, and and I've seen it as well with the, yeah, I mean, technology is amazing where we got to these days. And I think there was a question about plugins and hardware and all of this stuff. That's all personal, I suppose. You can make anything sound good with anything you want. But knowing your gear, you can have very simple gear, but knowing how they sound and how they work. And I've had this as like, what do you mean by that? It was like, this is where I come back to, please stop me if how you think about it, is knowing your gear. Like you see this mic over here. And the reason why I put it up here, I have an SM7 like everybody uses, but why would I put an SM7 like everything else? This mic is a Bayer Dynamic M88. I've recorded 2 full albums, all the guitars, the bass, the vocals, except for the drums, and whatever meanderings with this mic.
Mhm.
One album got nominated for Best Rock Album last 2019,
Nice, nice.
right?
Yeah.
All with one mic. Now, this initially is a kick drum mic
Mhm.
or a bass amp mic. It sounds great in my voice,
Yeah.
you know, or in my guitars. And
Sound like Barry White. No, I'm joking.
yeah, well, the thing is, you know, my guitar tone, I have a custom amp. It's kind of that the Dumble sound, the chimey bell sound, which I love very much. And I've tried many different mics to capture the actual sound of the amp, and I couldn't get it. And then one day I got this,
Mm.
and it worked like a charm.
Cool.
It worked like, and I said that, all right, this is fantastic. I found one mic instead of putting 2 mics.
Mm.
So what I'm coming to a point is I know how this mic sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly how it sounds. If I come closer, where I mic it, blah, blah, blah. And that's all I needed for these last 2 albums I did. One mic
Right on.
Right? I know how this, I'm still learning how my equipment sounds. Like I know a lot of them, like I would say 60, 70% of how they work and how they sound with different things. But because a lot of it's new as well, every day I'm experimenting. Let me throw this up. Let me throw this up. And okay, and then once you get to know your stuff, you'll know right away what color to put on or whatever you need to do. You know? I'm
Yeah.
just, this is what I'm getting to, is knowing your gear, knowing your plugin. Plugin is a piece of gear as well. So knowing how it actually works, how does it react? If it's a compressor, how does it react with your low end? How does it react with your high end? How does it react with your mids? Is it so and so and so? Do you put on your stereo? All of this stuff. Test it and experiment. I think this is a Sylvia Massey thing, who I love. She's an amazing, amazing engineer. Also, Joe Barisi, they experiment a lot. I have a lot of guitar pedals, and I've been also experimenting with running them as outboard, cheap man's outboard, right? Into that. But I know, especially pedals, because I'm a guitar player and I know exactly how each pedal sounds. So like, oh, you know what? This Octavia would sound good on my vocal on there. So I patch it out, put it in. I'm like, oh, cool. Made me a crazy effect. And the thing is, another point to this is everybody has the same plugin. So what makes it studio different as well is creating your own sound in there. Like nobody, like the other day, a few weeks ago, a good friend of mine, Gorgon, and came to record his keys. He's got his synths. I'm like, dude, let's plug that into these two pedals, that pedal, and let's try it into this preamp I have here, and let's come up with a crazy sound. We're trying to come up with some crazy oscillations. We came up with a really cool sound. I was like, wow, you're not going to get that in any other studio or any plugin. That's one thing. Do you know what I mean? So authenticity is also something else, and that's because of experimentation and playing around.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So to all of you out there, experiment a lot and know your gear. You don't need that much, I think. That's my personal opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right on. Yeah, makes sense.
You know,
Yeah. Right
and
on.
here it is on live stream. This mic, the legendary mic, it's dear to my heart.
Nice.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Anyway,
Any more
so
questions down there, or that's I'm trying to see, but nothing. No, no, I don't seem to be see any new questions. Anything? Yeah.
no, I mean, look, to close this off, I have the last question. What is your most practical? I don't want to say what is your advice to young engineers. No, I'm going to say what is your most practical advice to young engineers starting out?
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna. How about this? I don't know if Converging Sounds are there. These are the guys. They're quite active on the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I keep seeing them. Converging sounds. Every EQ is different and every
So
compressor.
it's about a duo or trio of lads, and I'm gonna. I think they will answer that question by typing in the chat what I would tell them. I don't know. There's a 20-second delay, right?
Yeah.
I think they will talk about hustling.
Hustling.
It's all about being around. There you go. Look, agree 100%. These guys. It's,
All right.
this is what it's all. I think it's about being in the right place at the right time. You
And
know.
if you can be in the right place at the right time,
Excuse me.
and if you cannot be in the right place at the right time.
Well, I try to pass on. It's like I don't consider myself particularly scientific or mathematical or incredibly creative. I am determined, and I think this is the key: just to be determined, um, to work for free. Meet people, be nice. Try not to. I mean, I've also got this wrong in the past. I've been quite insane, as some of the people over here will know. But I would say I think it's about meeting people and being around, being and just hustling. And
Yeah.
that sounds like a bad thing, but I think it's about
Perseverance.
what does that look like? Basically, that looks like working with people, going to the concert, recording someone for free, mixing their stuff for free, through the experience. Working. And I think nowadays it needs to be more multimedia ways. So you need to collaborate with someone in design. I think uh, you know some presence online is necessary. Now the hustling and the I say hustling, it means networking is probably a cheesier word for it.
Right.
Meeting people, talking to people. you know, I think this is or if someone's a bedroom producer, even that it can't be done alone. You know, check your mixes with someone or collaborate with someone. I think it's about just being determined, I guess.
Determination, perseverance, and
Yeah,
hard, bloody work.
if your if your drive to be somewhere else is strong enough, then you're going to be somewhere else.
Yep.
That's my
It all comes back to the individual, isn't it?
yeah, I think so. So I don't know if that's very wise, but I don't know. I'll stick with it for now.
No, definitely wise words. Well, Andy, it was fantastic talking to you.
Thank you so
It
much.
was absolute pleasure. I can't wait for you to come back and we can hit the studio here and experiment with a lot of stuff.
I'd love to do that, and I just want to big shout out to Assad. You know, he's got really an awesome studio, and I love the way that you guys are. The Bull Funk studio is keeping the community going. You know, this is
Thank you.
important, and really respect for that. And I'm so honored to be your first.
I'm honored to have you.
Likewise, likewise, and thanks to all the lads who are chatting down there. Tom Davidson, Monica, say hello, and
I haven't been watching.
Sounds, and all the people asking questions. Yeah, it's so nice that you participate, and I wish you all the best. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. I mean, just before you go, I just for the rest of the questions, guys, I'm sure me and Andy will look over them and we can have them answered on the page. All we need you guys to do is, if you guys don't mind, subscribing to Bullfunk Studios YouTube channel, hit the bell button, like, and all this good stuff, and follow through. There'll be a lot more of this, and yeah, Andy,
Well,
love you, bruh.
likewise, likewise. Here, look, the converging sounds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what do you say?
hustle's real.
What's that?
The hustle's real.
Word, dude.
Uh, Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.
See ya.